The sun hadn't even risen when they came for her. Eliza Carter stood barefoot in the dirt, watching 5 warriors dismount in front of her father's shack. She didn't need to ask why. The trembling in her father's hands told her everything. He'd sold her, traded her like livestock to pay debts she didn't know existed. In Red Hollow, a town where the law was whatever you could enforce with a gun, there was no one to call for help. No sheriff would challenge Chief Kalen's men. No neighbor would risk their own neck for hers. This is a story of betrayal, survival, and the choice that changed everything. If you're watching from somewhere out there, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and stick with me till the end. You won't believe where this goes. The roosters hadn't started their morning racket yet when Eliza woke to the sound of horses. Not the usual passing through kind that sometimes brought traders or drifters. These moved with purpose, hooves hitting the hardpan in rhythm, deliberate, military almost. She sat up on her straw mattress, the threadbare blanket falling away. The pre-dawn chill bit through her thin nightdress. Through the gaps in the plank walls, she could see shadows moving across the yard. 5 horses. Maybe 6. Her father's voice drifted through the walls, higher pitched than normal. Scared. Eliza pulled on her dress, the gray one with the torn hem she kept meaning to fix but never did, and stepped into her boots without bothering with stockings. Her fingers fumbled with the buttons. The voices outside had stopped. That silence felt worse than shouting. She pushed open the door to the main room. Her father stood with his back to her, shoulders hunched like a beaten dog. Through the window, she could see them clearly now. Warriors. Not soldiers, not cowboys. They wore leather and bone, their hair long and decorated with feathers and beads that caught the first gray light of dawn. Papa? He didn't turn around. The lead warrior sat straight-backed on a painted horse, a big buckskin with a white blaze. The man himself looked carved from stone, his face all hard angles and darker than the saddle leather. Even sitting, you could tell he was tall, the kind of tall that made you feel small without him saying a word. Papa, what's happening? Her father's hand shook as he reached for the whiskey bottle on the table. Empty. He'd probably killed it last night. The glass fell from his fingers and rolled across the floor, making a hollow sound. Thomas Carter. The warrior's voice carried through the window, clear and cold. We had an agreement. I know. Her father's voice cracked. I know. I need more time. Another week, maybe 2. We gave you 3 months. Please. Her father turned and Eliza saw his face properly for the first time. He looked like he'd aged a decade overnight. Eyes red-rimmed and sunken, stubble covering his jaw. Please, there's gotta be another way. I can work. You can work? The warrior leaned forward in his saddle. You can barely stand, Thomas. You drink more than you earn. You gamble what little you have left. Your land is worthless, your house falls apart around you, and you have nothing of value. The way he said nothing made Eliza's stomach drop. Nothing except her. Eliza felt the floor shift beneath her feet. Papa? I'm sorry. Her father wouldn't look at her. Eliza, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do. The debts just kept piling up, and Madigan said he'd kill me. He said he'd burn the house with both of us inside, and What did you do? Her voice came out steady, even though her hands were shaking. Mr. Carter came to me 6 months ago. The warrior spoke like her father wasn't even there. He needed money. A great deal of money, very quickly. I gave him what he asked for with clear terms. He would repay me within 3 months with interest. If he could not repay with money, he would repay with trade. I didn't think you'd actually, her father started. You signed an agreement. You put your mark on paper in front of witnesses. What kind of trade? Eliza asked, though she already knew. The way the warrior looked at her, not like she was a person, but not like she was nothing either. More like she was a horse he was considering buying, evaluating. Your father offered you as payment for his debt. The words hung in the air like gun smoke. Eliza looked at her father, really looked at him. This man who'd raised her after her mother died, who taught her to shoot and ride and read, who used to tell her stories about her mother, about how brave and strong she'd been, who'd promised to protect her always. He couldn't even meet her eyes. How much? Her voice sounded strange in her own ears, distant. Eliza, please, how much did you owe? The warrior named a sum. It wasn't even that much, 3 good horses, maybe 4. A season's worth of decent work. Her father had sold her for less than a year's wages. Get dressed, the warrior said. Bring what you can carry. We leave in 10 minutes. Now wait just a damn minute. Her father tried to step forward, but one of the other warriors moved his horse to block him. The animal was huge, and the message was clear. You have no say in this, Thomas. You gave up that right when you signed your name. Eliza stood frozen. Her mind raced through options like shuffling cards. She could run, but where? Red Hollow was 3 miles away across open ground. These men had horses and knew the territory. She could fight. She had her rifle in the other room. She might get one shot off before they killed her. She could scream, but who would come? Mrs. Henderson next door was half deaf, and her husband was probably already drunk. The nearest law was 2 days' ride away. There was no law anyway. Not really. Not out here on the frontier where might made right, and justice was whatever you could enforce with blood and bullets. Miss Carter, the warrior's tone shifted slightly. Not soft, but less cold. I would prefer you come willingly. I will not drag you. But make no mistake, you will come. This debt is settled today, one way or another. She found her voice. And if I refuse? He looked at her for a long moment. Then I take my payment from your father in other ways. Ways that will hurt him considerably more than losing a daughter he barely speaks to. That's not true. Her father's protest sounded hollow even to him. When was the last time you ate a meal together? The warrior asked. When did you last have a conversation that didn't end with you drinking yourself unconscious? She runs this house, Thomas. She tends the garden, repairs the roof, feeds the chickens. What exactly do you contribute besides debt and shame? Her father had no answer. Eliza felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart breaking, that had happened years ago, slowly, every time her father chose whiskey over her company. This was different. This was the last fragile thread of hope snapping. The tiny, stupid part of her that thought maybe he'd change, maybe he'd become the father she needed. He'd sold her, and he couldn't even look her in the eye while doing it. 10 minutes, the warrior repeated. Eliza turned and walked back to her room. Her hands moved automatically, pulling her other dress from the hook, rolling it tight. She had a brush, a small mirror, 3 books she'd read so many times the pages were soft as cloth, a pocket knife her mother had owned, a silver locket with a photograph so faded you could barely make out the faces. Everything she owned fit in a canvas bag that had once held seed corn. She stood in the middle of the room that had been hers for 22 years, the mattress she'd slept on since childhood, the wall where she'd marked her height every birthday until she turned 13, and her father stopped remembering the dates. The window she'd looked through 1,000 times, dreaming of somewhere else, anywhere else. Be careful what you wish for. She slung the bag over her shoulder and walked back out. Her father stood by the table, one hand gripping the edge like he might fall if he let go. Eliza, please. You gotta understand. I understand perfectly. Her voice came out flat. You chose yourself, like you always do. That ain't fair. Fair. The word tasted like poison. You want to talk about fair? You made this mess, Papa. You drank it. You gambled it. You borrowed it. And now I'm the one paying for it. I'll fix this. I swear I'll find a way to get you back. Don't. She looked him in the eye for what she knew would be the last time. Don't promise me anything. Don't tell me you'll change. Don't tell me you're sorry. You used those words up years ago. She walked past him to the door. Eliza? She stopped, her hand on the frame. Didn't turn around. The chickens need feeding. There's half a bag of corn in the shed. The roof over the porch is rotting through. It'll cave in with the next good rain. There's firewood that needs splitting, and the well rope is fraying. Why are you telling me this? Because there's no one else to do it now. She stepped out into the dawn. You're on your own, Papa, just like you wanted. The warrior, she still didn't know his name, sat watching her with dark, unreadable eyes. Up close, she could see the details. Scars on his hands and forearms, old ones, healed silver white. a necklace of bear claws around his throat. His face was younger than she'd thought, maybe early 30s, but it was a hard 30. The kind of face that had seen things and done things. "You ready?" he asked. "Does it matter?" Something that might have been respect flickered across his expression. "Get on the horse." One of the other warriors brought up a smaller mare, a pretty sorrel with a white star. Eliza threw her bag across the saddle and pulled herself up. She'd been riding since before she could walk. At least they weren't putting her on a lead rope like a pack mule. Small mercies. The warrior turned his buckskin, and the others fell in around them. 2 in front, 3 behind. Eliza sat in the middle like a prisoner being transported. As they rode past the house, she didn't look back, didn't let herself. But she heard it. Her father calling her name one last time, voice breaking on the second syllable. She kept her eyes forward. Red Hollow appeared on the eastern horizon as the sun cleared the mountains. A handful of buildings crouched in the dust like vultures waiting for something to die. The saloon, the general store, the livery, the church, nobody used except for weddings and funerals. Maybe 20 families total, scattered across the valley in homesteads that clung to the land with desperate fingers. The warriors didn't slow down as they passed through. A few early risers stopped to stare. Mrs. Henderson on her porch, hand shading her eyes. The blacksmith standing in his doorway, hammer forgotten in his hand. Young Billy Tucker hauling water from the well, bucket dangling from limp fingers. They all watched Eliza ride past in the center of her captors. Not one of them said a word. Not one of them moved to help. She'd lived here her whole life, knew every face, every name. She'd helped Mrs. Henderson when she was sick last winter, bringing soup and tending her fire. She'd traded vegetables from her garden with the blacksmith's wife. She'd taught Billy Tucker to read when his parents couldn't afford a tutor. And they watched her ride away like she was already dead. That hurt worse than her father's betrayal somehow. At least he had the excuse of being drunk and desperate and weak. These people were just scared, too scared to stand up, too scared to speak out, too scared to do anything that might bring trouble to their own doors. The frontier made cowards of everyone eventually. They rode east toward the rising sun, leaving Red Hollow behind. The land opened up into rolling prairie, grass as high as the horses' bellies, going on forever in waves of gold and green. The sky stretched overhead, so big and blue it made her chest ache. It was beautiful. Eliza hated that she noticed. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, beating down on her uncovered head. Her lips cracked. Her throat turned to dust. None of the warriors spoke. They rode in silence, only the creak of leather and the sound of hooves in grass. Around midday, the lead warrior held up a hand. Everyone stopped. "We rest here." The warriors dismounted in unison, moving with practiced efficiency. 2 went to check the horses, 1 walked the perimeter, 1 started building a small fire. The last one simply sat down on a rock and pulled out what looked like jerky. No one told Eliza what to do. She slid off the mare, legs stiff from hours in the saddle. Her canteen was nearly empty. She'd rationed it carefully, not knowing when they'd stop. One of the warriors, younger than the others with a long scar down his left cheek, brought over a skin of water. "Drink," he said. His English was accented but clear. She took it, eyeing him warily. "Thank you." He shrugged and walked away. The lead warrior sat beneath the shade of a lone cottonwood, checking his horse's hooves. Eliza walked over, her shadow falling across him. "I don't even know your name," she said. He looked up at her, one eyebrow raised. "Does it matter? You know mine. Seems only fair I know yours." He set down the horse's hoof and straightened. Even sitting, he was almost eye level with her standing. "Kaylin." "Chief Kaylin?" "Just Kaylin for now." "For now?" "You're not my people yet. You haven't earned the right to call me chief." The arrogance should have made her angry. Instead, it just felt honest. "And what do I call you until then?" "Kaylin works fine." She sat down without being invited, legs giving out more than anything else. "Where are we going?" "North and west, another 2 days' ride." "To your tribe?" "Yes." "And when we get there, what happens to me?" He studied her face like he was trying to read a map. "That depends on you." How encouraging. "You want me to lie to you? Tell you it'll be easy, that everyone will welcome you with open arms?" He shook his head. You're a white woman being brought to a native settlement. Some will be curious, some will be suspicious, some will hate you on sight for the color of your skin and what your people have done to ours. I haven't done anything to your people. Hasn't stopped your people from doing plenty to mine. She couldn't argue with that. Everyone knew the stories, the broken treaties, the stolen land, the massacres. The frontier was built on blood. Always had been. So why me? She asked. Why take me at all? The money my father owed. You could have just taken his land, his house, could have taken it out of his hide. I could have. Kalen pulled out his own water skin and drank. But I didn't want his worthless land or his pathetic life. I wanted to teach him a lesson. A lesson? 6 months ago, your father came to me drunk and desperate. Said he needed money to pay off some men who were threatening to kill him. I gave him what he asked for, with terms. He agreed. Signed paper. Gave his word. Kalen's voice hardened. Then he spent the money on whiskey and cards. Lost it all in 2 weeks. Eliza closed her eyes. Of course he did. When the debt came due, he begged for more time. I gave him 3 months. He promised he'd work, save, pay it back. Gave me his word as a man. Kalen spat into the dirt. He didn't work, didn't save, just drank more, borrowed more, dug himself deeper. When I came back, he had nothing. Nothing except you. So this is about his word. This is about what happens when you make a promise to me and break it. Kalen looked at her directly. Your father thought because I'm native, my word doesn't count. Thought he could shake my hand, take my money, and walk away when it suited him. Thought I was too savage to understand contracts or too powerless to enforce them. And I'm the punishment. You're the lesson. Every time he wakes up alone in that falling down house, he'll remember. Every time he has to do his own chores, tend his own fire, cook his own meals, he'll remember. Every time he looks at that empty space where you used to be, he'll remember that he gave his word and broke it, that his weakness cost him the only thing of value he had left. It was cruel, calculated, and probably exactly what her father deserved. You said it depends on me, Eliza said. What happens when we get there? I did. So tell me, what do you expect from me? Kalen stood, dusting off his leather pants. I expect you to work. Everyone works. No one gets a free ride. I expect you to learn our ways, our language, our customs. I expect respect, even when you don't understand. And I expect you to decide whether you'll fight against your new life every day until you die bitter and alone, or whether you'll adapt and find a place among us. You expect me to just accept being sold like property. I expect you to survive. What you do beyond that is your choice. He walked away, leaving her sitting in the dust. The younger warrior with the scar brought her dried meat and flatbread. Eliza ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Her mind spun in circles, trying to find an angle, an escape, anything. But every option led to the same dead end. She was one woman alone on the open prairie, surrounded by warriors who knew this land like breathing, riding toward a destination she couldn't find on a map. She could run. She'd die. She could fight. She'd die. She could try to bargain, reason, plead. She'd still end up exactly where they were taking her. The only choice was how she got there, dragging her feet and weeping, or walking in with her head up. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. A Carter doesn't break, Eliza. We bend, we bruise, we bleed, but we don't break. Her mother had died believing that. Died working herself into the ground trying to keep the family fed while her husband drank away their savings. Died still loving a man who didn't deserve it. Eliza wouldn't make the same mistake. If they wanted to break her, they'd find her made of harder stuff than they expected. They rode through the afternoon and into evening, finally stopping as the sun touched the western horizon. The warriors set up camp with practiced efficiency. Fire, bedrolls, horses tended. They moved around each other like parts of a machine, everyone knowing their role. Eliza stood uselessly to one side until the scarred warrior gestured to a spot near the fire. You sleep there. She spread her bedroll without comment. The warriors talked among themselves in their own language, voices low. Occasionally one would glance at her, but mostly they acted like she wasn't there. It should have been frightening. Alone with 5 strange men in the middle of nowhere, no help for miles in any direction. but they showed no interest in her beyond making sure she didn't wander off. They didn't leer or make crude comments. They just ignored her, which was almost worse somehow, like she wasn't even worth noticing. Kaylin sat across the fire, talking with the older warrior who'd been riding point. Their conversation was quiet, intense. Once the older man gestured at Eliza, and Kaylin shook his head firmly. The other warrior frowned, but didn't push. "You speak English?" Eliza asked the scarred warrior who'd given her water. He looked surprised to be addressed. "Some." "What's your name?" He hesitated. "Dakota." "Thank you for the water earlier, Dakota." He nodded stiffly and turned away. Not hostile exactly, just uncomfortable. The fire crackled. Stars came out, more than Eliza had ever seen, scattered across the sky like someone had spilled diamonds on black velvet. The temperature dropped fast once the sun set, and she pulled her thin shawl tighter. "Cold?" Kaylin asked from across the fire. "I'm fine." He said something in his language to Dakota, who got up and brought over a thick fur blanket. "Take it." "I said I'm fine." "And I said take it." Kaylin's tone left no room for argument. "You getting sick doesn't help anyone." She took the blanket. It was warm, soft, and smelled like smoke and sage. She wrapped it around her shoulders, hating that it felt good. "Get some sleep," Kaylin said. "Long day tomorrow." "Where exactly are we going?" "I told you, north and west." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting tonight." He stretched out on his own bedroll, pillowing his head on his saddle. "Sleep, Eliza. You'll need your strength." She lay down, pulling the fur blanket up to her chin. Above her, the stars wheeled slowly across the infinite dark. Somewhere out there, her father was probably drinking himself into oblivion. Red Hollow was continuing on without her like she'd never existed. The whole world was spinning forward, and she was being carried along on a current she couldn't control. For the first time since the warriors arrived at dawn, Eliza let herself feel it. The fear, the anger, the bone-deep grief of losing everything in a single morning. She cried silently, tears running hot down her cold cheeks, soaking into the fur blanket. None of the warriors acknowledged it. Either they didn't notice or they were kind enough to pretend they didn't. She didn't know which would be worse. Day 2 dawned gray and threatening. Clouds rolled in from the west, heavy and dark, carrying the smell of rain. They broke camp quickly and rode hard, trying to outrun the weather. They didn't make it. The storm hit around noon, rain coming down in sheets so thick Eliza could barely see the horse in front of her. Thunder cracked overhead like rifle shots. Lightning split the sky, turning everything white for split seconds before plunging back into gray gloom. The warriors didn't stop. They pulled up hoods and kept riding, heads down against the wind. Eliza's dress soaked through in minutes, her hair plastered to her head. Water ran down her back, pooled in her boots. The mare under her struggled through mud that sucked at her hooves. Still, they rode. Hours later, Eliza lost track of how many, Kaylin finally called a halt. They'd reached some kind of rock formation, an overhang that provided minimal shelter. Everyone crowded under it, dripping and miserable. "No fire," Kaylin said. "Everything's too wet." We waited out. They huddled together for warmth, the shared misery creating a strange camaraderie. Even the horses pressed close, steam rising from their backs. Eliza's teeth chattered so hard she bit her tongue. The metallic taste of blood filled her mouth. "Here." Kaylin appeared beside her, wrapping his own dry fur around her shoulders. How he'd kept it dry, she had no idea. "What about you?" "I've survived worse." They sat in silence, listening to the rain hammer the earth. One of the warriors pulled out a skin of something stronger than water and passed it around. When it reached Eliza, she took a sip without thinking. Fire burned down her throat, exploding in her stomach. She coughed, eyes watering. The warriors laughed, the first human sound she'd heard from them besides orders and brief conversations. It wasn't mean laughter, just amused. "First time?" Dakota asked. "Obviously," she managed, voice hoarse. He grinned. "It gets easier. Or you just get used to suffering," another warrior said in accented English. "That too," Dakota agreed. The skin came around again. This time Eliza was ready for it. The second sip still burned, but less. The warmth spread through her chest, pushing back the chill. By the third pass, she almost liked it. Careful, Kaylin warned. That stuff will put you on your back if you're not used to it. Speaking from experience? His mouth quirked, almost a smile. I was 16 and stupid. My uncle had to carry me home. What happened? I woke up in a bush with no memory of how I got there and a headache that lasted 3 days. He took the skin when it came back to him, drinking without flinching. Learned my lesson after that. Did you? Mostly. He capped the skin and tucked it away. Still stupid sometimes, just not about drinking. The rain continued into evening. They stayed under the overhang, cold and damp, but alive. The warriors told stories in their language, acting out parts with exaggerated gestures. Eliza couldn't understand the words, but she got the gist. Hunting stories, probably. War stories, the kind men told when they were trying to outdo each other. She dozed off at some point, exhaustion finally winning over discomfort. When she woke, she was warmer. It took her a moment to realize why. Kaylin sat next to her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Body heat transferred through the layers of wet clothing and fur. He stared out at the rain, face unreadable. You didn't have to, she said quietly. Didn't have to what? This. The blanket, sitting here. You're worth nothing to me dead from cold. Is that the only reason? He didn't answer. The rain stopped sometime before dawn. They set out at first light, riding through a transformed landscape. Everything looked washed clean, colors brighter, air sharper. Steam rose from the grass as the sun hit it. Eliza's body ached from 2 days in the saddle. Her clothes were still damp and uncomfortable, and she had no idea what awaited her at their destination. But she was still alive, still moving forward, still refusing to break. Around midday on the third day, they crested a rise and Eliza saw it. A village spread out in the valley below, dozens of structures that looked nothing like the wooden buildings of Red Hollow. These were organic, made from earth and hide and wood, fitting into the landscape instead of fighting against it. Welcome home, Kaylin said. Eliza's stomach clenched. This was it, the point of no return. People were already gathering at the edge of the village, alerted by scouts. Men, women, children, all stopping what they were doing to watch the returning warriors, to watch her. Kaylin glanced at her. Last chance to fall apart. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin. I'm not falling apart. Good. He urged his horse forward. Then let's see if you can keep that promise. They rode down into the valley, into whatever came next. The horses picked their way down the slope, loose stones skittering under their hooves. Eliza kept her eyes on the village growing larger with each step, trying to read the faces of the people gathering to watch. She counted maybe 60 structures, some small, some large enough to house multiple families. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Dogs barked. Children stopped their games to stare. The crowd parted as Kaylin led them through. Eliza felt the weight of every eye on her. Some curious, some cold, some openly hostile. An older woman spat on the ground as they passed. A man said something harsh in their language, and several people laughed. Kaylin didn't acknowledge any of it. He rode straight through the center of the village to a larger structure set apart from the others. 2 warriors stood guard outside, hands on weapons, but they relaxed when they saw who it was. Wait here, Kaylin told Eliza. He dismounted and disappeared inside. The other warriors spread out, leading the horses away, greeting people, falling back into routines. Dakota gave Eliza a brief nod before vanishing into the crowd. She sat alone on the mare, surrounded by people who looked at her like she was something brought in on someone's boot. A child, maybe 6 years old, crept closer. Dark eyes, huge in a round face. Are you a ghost? Maya, get back here! A woman rushed forward, snatching the child's hand and pulling her away. She shot Eliza a venomous look before hurrying off. Ignore them! The voice came from behind her. Eliza turned to find a woman about her own age, tall and lean with sharp features and sharper eyes. She wore her hair in 2 long braids decorated with blue beads. They'll get used to you, or they won't. Either way, staring won't change anything. Who are you? Nita. I speak English because my mother was taken from a settlement when she was young. Before you ask, no, she didn't want to leave. Yes, She tried to escape multiple times. And yes, she eventually stopped trying. Nita studied Eliza with clinical interest. You planning to run? Would I get far? Not even a little bit. We're 3 days from the nearest white settlement in any direction, and that's if you know where you're going, which you don't. She gestured at the endless prairie surrounding them. Out there, you'd last maybe 2 days before you died of thirst, exposure, or something with teeth. Encouraging. I'm not here to encourage you. I'm here because Kalen sent word ahead that he was bringing you, and someone needs to show you how things work so you don't get yourself killed doing something stupid. Nita crossed her arms. So, you going to be stupid, or can we skip that part? Eliza slid off the mare, legs wobbling slightly. 3 days in the saddle had left her sore in places she didn't know could hurt. I'll try not to be stupid. That's all anyone can ask. Nita took the mare's reins. Come on, first thing is getting you out of those ridiculous clothes. You stick out like a wolf in a chicken coop. She led Eliza away from the central structure, weaving through the village. People stopped what they were doing to watch them pass. Some whispered, some just stared. An old man said something that made several people nearby laugh, the kind of laugh that had edges. What did he say? Eliza asked. You don't want to know. Tell me anyway, Nita sighed. He said you look too skinny to be worth the trouble of feeding. Said Kalen must be desperate or blind. She glanced at Eliza. For what it's worth, he says that about everyone. The man hasn't approved of anything since his second wife left him 15 years ago. They stopped at a dwelling on the eastern edge of the village, smaller than most but well-maintained. Nita pulled back the hide covering the entrance and gestured Eliza inside. The interior was dim, lit by sunlight filtering through a smoke hole in the roof. Furs covered the floor. Baskets lined the walls, filled with dried plants, roots, tools. A small fire pit sat cold in the center. It smelled like sage and smoke and something else Eliza couldn't identify. This is home now, Nita said. You'll stay here, with me. Why you? Because everyone else refused. She said it matter-of-factly, without malice. And because my mother was white, so people figure I'm the logical choice to babysit you until you figure out how to not be completely useless. I'm not useless. Can you tan a hide? No. Preserve meat for winter? No. Make medicine from plants? Build a proper fire? Track game, speak our language? Nita raised an eyebrow. You're useless. For now. Whether you stay that way is up to you. She pulled out clothing from one of the baskets. Leather, softer than Eliza expected, decorated with simple beadwork. Put these on. Your dress is falling apart and screams, I don't belong here, in a way that's going to make your life harder than it needs to be. Eliza hesitated, then started unbuttoning her dress. The gray fabric was stained, torn, and had been through too much in the past 3 days. It had never been much to begin with. The leather clothes fit surprisingly well, pants that came to mid-calf, a tunic that belted at the waist, soft boots that laced up the side. Practical, comfortable. Nothing like the restricting dresses she'd worn her whole life. Better, Nita said, evaluating her. You still look like a lost lamb, but at least now you're a lost lamb that might survive the winter. Thanks. I think. Don't thank me yet, come on. If you're going to live here, you need to understand how things work. They spent the rest of the afternoon on a tour that felt more like a survival briefing. Nita showed her the communal cooking areas, the water source, a spring that bubbled up on the north side of the village, the storage pits where they kept food for winter. She pointed out which plants were safe to eat and which would kill you, which areas were off limits, and why. That's the council lodge, Nita said, gesturing to the large structure where Kalen had disappeared earlier. Only warriors and elders gather there. You don't go inside unless invited, and you definitely don't interrupt when they're meeting. Noted. And that, she pointed to a dwelling set slightly apart from the others, larger and better maintained, is Kalen's home. You also don't go there unless invited. Does he invite people often? Nita's expression went carefully neutral. He's chief. He does what he wants, but if you're asking what I think you're asking, no. He doesn't bring women to his home. Hasn't since his wife died. Eliza stopped walking. He was married? 3 years ago. She died in childbirth, the baby too. Nita's voice softened slightly. He hasn't been the same since, got harder, colder, threw himself into leading, into protecting the tribe, into everything except actually living. She glanced at Eliza. So, whatever you think you saw on the ride here, whatever you think might happen, forget it. Kalen doesn't let people close anymore. They walked on. The sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky orange and pink. Women called children inside for evening meals. Men returned from hunting, from checking trap lines, from whatever work filled their days. You'll work, Nita said, echoing what Kalen had told her. Everyone works, no exceptions. Can you cook? Yes. Good. Can you sew? Well enough. Also good. Can you fight? Eliza thought of her father teaching her to shoot, the rifle she'd left behind in Red Hollow. I can shoot, or I could, or I don't have a gun anymore. We don't use guns much. Loud, unreliable, require ammunition we can't always get. Nita pulled a knife from her belt, flipped it expertly, and slid it back. But everyone should know how to defend themselves. I'll teach you. Why are you helping me? Nita stopped, considering the question. Because I remember what it was like for my mother. Brought here against her will, scared, alone, everyone treating her like the enemy. It took her years to find her place, years of being miserable and fighting against something she couldn't change. She met Eliza's eyes. I can't make people accept you. I can't make this easy. But I can keep you from making the same mistakes she did. What mistakes? Spending so much time wishing for what she lost that she forgot to live the life she actually had. Before Eliza could respond, a commotion broke out near the center of the village. Raised voices, angry. They hurried back to find a crowd gathered, people shouting over each other in their language. In the middle of it stood Kalen and another man, nearly as tall but broader, with a scar running from his temple to his jaw. They weren't fighting, but they looked ready to start. That's Takeo, Nita muttered. Kalen's cousin. This should be good. What are they arguing about? You, probably. Takeo gestured sharply at Eliza, saying something harsh and fast. Kalen responded in the same tone, equally harsh. The crowd murmured, some agreeing with Takeo, some with Kalen. An older woman stepped forward, raising her hand. Immediate silence. She spoke briefly, her voice carrying authority that had nothing to do with volume. That's Grandmother Sana, Nita whispered. She leads the Council of Elders. When she speaks, people listen. Sana asked Kalen a question. He answered, shorter this time. She turned to Takeo, asked him something else. His response came with visible frustration. Then Sana looked directly at Eliza. Come here, girl. The crowd parted. Eliza walked forward on legs that felt disconnected from her body. She stopped a few feet from the old woman, close enough to see the deep lines around her eyes, the gray hair bound in elaborate braids, the intelligence in her gaze that missed nothing. Do you speak our language? Sana asked in English. No, ma'am. Ma'am. Sana's mouth twitched, almost a smile. I am Grandmother Sana. You may call me Grandmother, as everyone does. What is your name? Eliza Carter. Eliza Carter. And why are you here? The simple question had no simple answer. My father owed a debt. Kalen collected. So you are payment. Property. Sana tilted her head. Is that how you see yourself? No. Then how do you see yourself? Eliza chose her words carefully. I'm a person who got handed a situation I didn't choose, but I'm still here, still standing, still breathing. That has to count for something. Does it? Sana glanced at Kalen, then back to Eliza. My grandson brings you to our home. You did not ask to come. You do not want to be here. Why should we welcome you? I don't expect you to welcome me. I expect to earn my place, same as anyone. Earn it how? You have no skills that serve us. You cannot speak our language, know our customs, understand our ways. You are a burden. The words stung because they were true. Then I'll learn. I'll work. I'll do whatever needs doing. Will you? Sana stepped closer. Or will you run at the first opportunity? Will you betray us to the next white settlers who pass through? Will you bring disease or soldiers or trouble we do not need? I can't prove I won't. Not with words. Eliza held the old woman's gaze. All I can do is show you. Give me time. Time. Sana repeated the word like it tasted strange. Time is precious. Food is precious. Space is precious. Why should we spend any of it on you? Because Kalen made an agreement with my father, and apparently his word means something. The crowd stirred, some people bristling at her tone. He could have killed my father for breaking his promise. Could have just taken everything and left us with nothing. But he chose this instead. So ask him why I'm worth the trouble. Because it was his decision, not mine. Silence. Everyone looked at Kalen. He stood very still, expression unreadable. She's here because I brought her here. The debt is settled, the agreement fulfilled. What happens now is for the council to decide. Coward's answer, Takeo spat. You make the decision, then hand the consequences to us. I'm chief. I don't have to explain my decisions to you. You do when those decisions affect the entire tribe. Takeo's frustration boiled over. We're already stretched thin. Game is scarce this season. Winter is coming, and you bring another mouth to feed? A white woman who brings nothing but risk. She brings leverage. The word dropped like a stone in water. Ripples spread through the crowd. Leverage, Takeo repeated slowly. Against who? Against anyone who needs it. Kalen's voice stayed level, but something dangerous moved underneath. The settlements are expanding. We've lost 2 hunting grounds in the past year to white expansion. How long before they push us out completely? And having one of their women stops that how? It doesn't stop it, but it complicates things. Kalen looked at the gathered crowd. We're not strong enough to fight them directly. We never will be. They have numbers, weapons, resources we can't match. So we need other tools, other strategies. You're using her as a hostage, Nita said quietly beside Eliza. Sana raised her hand again. Enough. Kalen has given his reasoning. The council will discuss and decide. Until then, the girl stays. She looked at Eliza. You will work. You will learn. You will cause no trouble. If you break these rules, there will be consequences. Understood? Yes, grandmother. Good. Nita, she remains your responsibility. Keep her out of trouble. I'll try, Nita said dryly. The crowd dispersed slowly, people breaking into smaller groups to discuss what they'd just witnessed. Takeo shot Kalen a look that promised their conversation wasn't over before stalking away. Kalen approached Eliza and Nita. Up close, Eliza could see the tension in his jaw, the tightness around his eyes. You held up better than I expected. You didn't mention the part where I'm leverage. Would it have changed anything if I had? No, but I would have appreciated knowing I'm a political chess piece. Everyone's a chess piece. He sounded tired. The difference is most people don't realize it. Comforting. I'm not here to comfort you. He glanced at Nita. Show her where to eat, where to sleep. Tomorrow she starts earning her keep. Doing what? Eliza asked. Whatever Nita tells you to do. He walked away without waiting for a response. Nita snorted. Well, that went better than I expected. How is any of that better? Nobody tried to kill you. That's better. She started walking, and Eliza followed because there wasn't much else to do. Come on, you must be starving. Let's get food before someone decides you don't deserve any. They ate with a group of women around one of the communal fires. Nobody spoke to Eliza directly, but they didn't chase her away either. Small progress. The food was simple. Some kind of stew with meat and roots, flatbread, water. It tasted better than anything Eliza had eaten in recent memory. Tomorrow you help with the morning meal, Nita said around a mouthful of bread. Then tanning, then firewood, then whatever else needs doing. Sounds like fun. It's survival. Fun has nothing to do with it. They returned to Nita's dwelling as full dark settled over the village. Inside, Nita showed Eliza where to spread her bedroll, how to bank the fire so it would last through the night, which baskets held what supplies. Get some sleep, Nita said, settling onto her own furs. Tomorrow starts early. Eliza lay in the darkness, listening to unfamiliar sounds, dogs barking in the distance, someone singing a low, haunting melody, the wind moving through the grass. It was nothing like Red Hollow, nothing like the small room she'd slept in her entire life. Nita? She said quietly. Yeah? Your mother. Did she ever stop missing her old life? Silence stretched long enough that Eliza thought maybe Nita had fallen asleep. Then, I don't know, she died when I was 12 and she never talked about it much, but I remember, Nita's voice softened. I remember her standing at the edge of the village sometimes, looking east toward the sunrise, just standing there, so still, like she was trying to see something far away. Did she ever try to go back? Once, when I was 6, she made it maybe 10 miles before they brought her back. A pause. She never tried again after that. I think she finally understood that the life she remembered didn't exist anymore. Even if she went back, she wouldn't fit there. Too much had changed. She'd changed. Eliza thought about Red Hollow, about her father, about everything she'd left behind. Do you think that'll happen to me? I think it already started happening the moment you rode into this village. The question isn't whether you'll change. You will. The question is whether you'll fight it every step of the way or whether you'll let yourself become something new. Nita rolled over, her back to Eliza. Sleep. Tomorrow's going to be hard enough without you being exhausted. Eliza closed her eyes, but sleep didn't come easily. Her mind spun through everything that had happened, everything that was happening, everything that might happen. She was leverage, a political tool, a burden to be managed. But she was also still alive, still here, still herself. That had to be enough for now. She woke before dawn to Nita shaking her shoulder. Up, we're late. They stumbled outside into pre-dawn gray. Other women were already gathering at the cooking fires, starting the morning meal. Nita dragged Eliza over and immediately put her to work stirring an enormous pot, while older women added ingredients and barked instructions she didn't understand. One woman demonstrated how to test if the porridge was done by lifting the spoon and watching how it fell. Too thin, keep cooking. Too thick, add water. Just right, start serving. They fed what felt like the entire village. People lined up with bowls, received their portions, and moved on. Some thanked the cooks. Some just took their food. A few gave Eliza suspicious looks, but didn't comment. Kalen came through the line near the end. He took his bowl from Nita, glanced at Eliza, and kept walking. No acknowledgement, no conversation, like she was part of the furniture. Don't take it personally, Nita said, watching him go. He's like that with everyone lately. After the meal came cleanup, then Nita dragged her to where several women worked scraping hides stretched on wooden frames. The smell hit Eliza like a fist, blood and fat and something rancid that made her stomach heave. You'll get used to it, one of the women said in broken English. She showed Eliza how to hold the scraper, what angle to use, how much pressure. Too hard, you tear. Too soft, you leave fat. Fat makes hide rot. Eliza's arms ached within an hour. Her back screamed, her hands cramped around the scraper's handle. But she kept going because everyone else was working and stopping meant admitting defeat. Around midday, Nita brought water. Break, drink. Eliza collapsed onto the ground, gulping air. Her hands shook. You're doing better than I expected, Nita admitted. That's supposed to make me feel better? Little bit, Nita grinned. Most outsiders quit after the first hide. You're on your third. I can't feel my arms. You will tomorrow. That's when it really hurts. After the break came firewood duty. Eliza followed Nita and 2 other women out to a grove of trees about a mile from the village. They spent hours cutting deadfall, stripping branches, bundling wood to carry back. The other women spoke in their language, occasionally laughing at jokes Eliza couldn't understand. She worked in silence, feeling the blister forming on her palm, the burn in her shoulders, the exhaustion settling into her bones. On the walk back, laden with wood, one of the women, younger, maybe 16, spoke to her directly. You work hard. Thank you. But work hard is not enough. You must be fast too. Winter comes soon. It wasn't cruel, just factual. Eliza nodded, too tired to form a better response. They stacked the wood in the communal pile, then Nita led her back to their dwelling. Rest before evening meal. You've earned it. Eliza collapsed onto her furs and was asleep in seconds. She woke to darkness and voices outside. Not raised in anger, just conversation. She sat up, disoriented, every muscle in her body screaming protest. Easy, Nita said from across the fire. You slept through the evening meal. I brought you food. A bowl sat near Eliza's bedroll, still warm. She ate mechanically, barely tasting it. "How do you do this every day?" she asked. "Practice, you'll build strength, calluses, endurance." Nita poked the fire with a stick. "Give it a week, it'll hurt less. And if it doesn't, then you're not trying hard enough." Days blurred together. Wake before dawn, cook, clean, work hides, gather firewood, haul water, cook again, collapse. Repeat. Eliza's hands developed calluses. Her arms stopped shaking after a full day's work. She learned to identify plants by sight, learned a handful of words in the language, learned which people to avoid and which might actually help if she asked. Takeo avoided her entirely, which suited her fine. Dakota nodded when they crossed paths, but never lingered. Grandmother Sana watched from a distance, evaluating, judging, never quite approving. Kalen she saw only in passing. He was always busy with something, council meetings, hunting parties, settling disputes. When their paths crossed, he might nod, might not. It was impossible to read him. 2 weeks in, Nita declared Eliza competent enough to work unsupervised on basic tasks. "You're not skilled, but you're not completely useless anymore. Progress. Your encouragement knows no bounds. I'm not here to encourage. I'm here to make sure you survive." That afternoon, working alone on a hide, Eliza noticed a small girl watching from behind a dwelling, the same child who'd asked if she was a ghost that first day. Maya. "Hello," Eliza said carefully. The girl didn't run this time. "You're still here." "Still here. Mama said you'd leave. That white people always leave." "Maybe, but not today." Maya crept closer. "Can you tell stories?" "What kind of stories?" "Any kind. Mama's too busy, and grandmother only tells the old ones about warriors and spirits. I want different stories." Eliza thought for a moment. "I know a story about a girl who planted magic beans." Maya's eyes went wide. "Magic? Very magic. You want to hear it?" The girl nodded eagerly, plopping down on the ground. Eliza told the story while she worked, simplifying it, making it exciting. Maya listened with total absorption, occasionally interrupting with questions. "What happened to the giant?" "He fell from the beanstalk and was never seen again." "Good. Giants are bad." "Most of them," Eliza agreed. When she finished, Maya jumped up. "Tell me another tomorrow?" "If your mother says it's okay." The girl ran off, and Eliza went back to scraping. She didn't notice Nita standing nearby until she spoke. "That was dangerous." Eliza looked up. "What was?" "Letting her get close. People here are suspicious enough without you befriending their children." "She asked for a story. I told her one. And tomorrow she'll ask for another. And the day after. And eventually her mother will decide you're trying to corrupt her daughter with white ideas and cause problems you don't need." Nita's expression was serious. "I'm not saying be cruel. I'm saying be careful. Everything you do is being watched and judged." "So I should what? Ignore a lonely kid who just wants a story?" "I'm saying think about the consequences before you act." Nita walked away, leaving Eliza alone with her thoughts. That night, lying in the darkness, Eliza wondered if Nita was right. If every small kindness would be twisted into something suspicious. If she'd ever be anything more than the white woman Kalen brought home as leverage. The next day, Maya showed up again. And the day after. Her mother never said anything, just watched from a distance with an expression Eliza couldn't read. 3 weeks became 4. The weather turned colder. People started preparing seriously for winter, smoking meat, storing grain, reinforcing dwellings against the coming snow. Eliza worked alongside everyone else, her hands steadier now, her movements more confident. She learned more words, learned to read moods and unspoken rules. Learned that Takeo's hostility came from losing his sister to white soldiers 5 years ago. Learned that Grandmother Sana's husband had been killed in a raid. Learned that almost everyone here had lost someone to the expansion of settlements, the broken treaties, the endless hunger of people who looked like her for land that wasn't theirs. She carried that knowledge like stones in her pockets. One evening, Kalen appeared at Nita's dwelling. "I need to speak with Eliza." Nita glanced between them, then made herself scarce. They stood in awkward silence for a moment. "Walk with me," Kaylin finally said. They walked to the edge of the village where the prairie stretched out under a sky full of stars. The night was cold, their breath visible in small clouds. You've lasted longer than I expected, Kaylin said. Should I be flattered? Take it however you want. He stared out at the darkness. The council met tonight. They've made their decision about you. Eliza's stomach clenched. And? You can stay, officially. You'll be considered part of the tribe with all the responsibilities and protections that brings. She let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Why? Because despite Takeo's protests and some lingering suspicion, you've proven you can work. You pull your weight. You haven't caused trouble. And Maya won't stop talking about your stories, which apparently carries weight with the mothers. He almost smiled. Children are better judges of character than adults sometimes. So I'm in? You're in for now. But understand, this isn't permanent acceptance. One mistake, one betrayal, one hint that you're more trouble than you're worth, and the decision reverses. Fast. Understood. They stood in silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. Why did you really bring me here? Eliza asked. The truth. Not the leverage story you told the council. Kaylin was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because your father needed to learn that actions have consequences. Because I needed to prove that my word means something, even to people who think it doesn't. And because... He paused. Because I saw the way you held your head up when they came for you. Like you were walking to your own execution with dignity. Most people break. You didn't. I wanted to. But you didn't. That matters. He started walking back toward the village. Eliza followed. At Nita's dwelling, he stopped. Tomorrow you start learning our language properly. Nita will teach you. The better you speak, the easier this gets. Kaylin? He turned. Thank you. For giving me a chance. His expression was unreadable in the darkness. Don't thank me yet. Winter's coming, and out here, winter kills the weak. Let's see if you make it to spring before you thank anyone. He walked away, leaving Eliza standing in the cold. She went inside to find Nita waiting. Well? I can stay. Congratulations, you're officially one of us. Nita didn't sound particularly thrilled, which means when things go wrong, you'll suffer right alongside everyone else. Always so optimistic. I'm realistic, there's a difference. Nita started preparing for bed. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start language lessons, and I'm not a patient teacher. Eliza lay down, staring at the darkness. She was officially part of the tribe now, protected, accepted, at least provisionally. She should feel relieved, maybe even happy. Instead, she felt the weight of expectation settling onto her shoulders like a physical thing. She'd proven she could survive the first few weeks. Now came the harder part. Now came actually living here, building something that might resemble a life. And somewhere in the darkness, in a falling down house 3 days' ride away, her father was probably drinking himself to sleep, alone with his choices. Eliza closed her eyes and didn't let herself think about him. Not anymore. That life was gone. This was what she had now, and she'd be damned if she'd waste it. Winter arrived early that year, sweeping down from the north with teeth made of ice and wind that cut through leather like it was paper. Eliza woke one morning to find frost coating the inside of the dwelling, her breath forming clouds thick enough to see shapes in. Up, Nita said, already dressed and moving. Storm's coming, big one. We need to finish preparations today, or we'll regret it tomorrow. The entire village moved with urgent purpose. Men reinforced dwellings with extra hides and packed earth. Women hauled final loads of firewood, checked food stores, brought in anything that couldn't survive being buried under snow. Children were kept close, helping where they could, staying out of the way where they couldn't. Eliza worked until her hands went numb, then kept working anyway. She hauled water until the barrels were full, stacked firewood until her back screamed, helped seal gaps in dwellings with a mixture of mud and grass that Nita showed her how to make. Pack it tight, Nita instructed, her own hands moving fast. Any gap lets in wind, and wind steals heat faster than anything. By late afternoon, the sky had turned the color of old bruises. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of snow and something else, something wild and dangerous. Everyone inside, Grandmother Sana called out, her voice carrying across the village. Now! People scattered to their homes. Eliza followed Nita, glancing back to see Kaylin still outside, checking one last dwelling, making sure everyone was accounted for. Even from a distance, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the weight of responsibility. Their eyes met for a second before Dakota called to him, and he turned away. Inside, Nita banked the fire high and checked their supplies. "We might be stuck inside for days, maybe a week if it's bad." "A week?" "Last big storm, we were snowed in for 9 days. 2 elders died from cold. 3 children got sick, 1 didn't make it." Nita's face was grim. Winter doesn't care how prepared you think you are. It finds the weak spots and exploits them. The storm hit an hour later. Eliza had seen snow before, the light dustings that occasionally reached Red Hollow. This was something else entirely. The wind howled like a living thing, shaking their dwelling. Snow fell so thick and fast, it was like the sky was emptying itself onto the earth. They huddled close to the fire, conserving heat and fuel. Nita taught her more words in their language, making her repeat them until her pronunciation improved. They talked about nothing and everything, filling the hours while the storm raged outside. "Tell me about your mother," Nita said on the second day, when cabin fever was starting to set in. Eliza poked at the fire with a stick. "What do you want to know?" "Anything. You never talk about her." "She died when I was 14, worked herself to death trying to keep us fed while my father drank away our money." The words came out flat, emotionless. She'd said them so many times they'd lost their sharp edges. "She was strong. Stronger than him. Stronger than me, probably." "I doubt that." "You didn't know her." "I know you. You're here, aren't you? Still standing after everything." Nita pulled her blanket tighter. "That's her strength in you." Eliza had never thought of it that way. On the third day, they heard shouting from somewhere in the village. Nita moved to the entrance, pulling back the hide covering just enough to look out. Snow blew in, and she cursed, slamming it shut. "Something's wrong. Stay here." Like hell. Eliza was already pulling on her furs. They fought their way through waist-deep snow to the commotion. A crowd had gathered outside one of the larger dwellings, and even through the storm, Eliza could hear a child crying. Not scared crying, pain crying. Kaylin stood in the entrance, talking rapidly with an older woman Eliza recognized as one of the healers. The woman shook her head, gesturing helplessly. "What's happening?" Eliza asked a woman standing nearby. "The healer's sick, can't work, and Maya..." The woman's voice caught. "Maya's burning with fever. Her mother doesn't know what to do." Maya, the little girl who'd wanted stories. Eliza pushed through the crowd before she could think better of it. "Let me see her." Kaylin blocked her path. "This isn't your concern. I helped my mother tend sick people in Red Hollow. I know some things." It was barely true, but desperation made her bold. "If your healer can't work and Maya's getting worse, what do you have to lose?" He stared at her for a long moment, and she watched the calculation happen behind his eyes. Risk versus reward. Pride versus practicality. "If she dies," he started. "If she dies because you wouldn't let me try, how's that different?" Eliza met his gaze without flinching. "I'm not saying I can save her, but I can try." Kaylin stepped aside. Inside, the dwelling was stifling, the fire built too high in an attempt to sweat out the fever. Maya lay on furs, her small body shaking, skin flushed and hot to the touch. Her mother sat beside her, looking helpless and terrified. Eliza knelt beside the girl. "Maya, can you hear me?" The child's eyes opened, unfocused. "Story?" "Not right now, sweetheart. Right now we need to make you better." She looked at Maya's mother. "How long has she been like this?" "Since yesterday. The fever keeps climbing." Eliza touched Maya's forehead, her neck, feeling for swollen glands. She'd seen fevers before, helped her mother through enough of them. Sometimes you could break them with cold compresses and herbs. Sometimes they broke on their own. Sometimes they didn't break at all. "We need to bring the fever down," she said, forcing confidence into her voice she didn't feel. "The room's too hot. Bank the fire, open the smoke hole slightly. We need air moving." "That will make her cold." Maya's mother protested. The fever is what's killing her. We need to fight it. Eliza turned to Nita, who'd followed her in. I need snow, clean water, and any herbs you have for fever. Willow bark if you have it, anything with birch, even mint will help. Nita nodded and disappeared. Maya's mother looked at Kaylin standing in the entrance. He nodded once, and she moved to adjust the fire. Eliza stripped off the heavy furs covering Maya, leaving just a light covering. The girl whimpered at the sudden temperature change. I know, baby. I know it feels wrong, but trust me. She dampened a cloth in the water basin and began wiping down Maya's face, her neck, her arms. Small strokes, methodical, trying to pull heat away from the skin. Nita returned with snow and a collection of dried plants. This is what we have. Eliza recognized maybe half of them. She picked out what she knew, crushed them between her palms, added hot water to make a weak tea. We need to get her to drink this. Between them, they coaxed small sips into Maya. The girl fought it, turning her head, crying weakly. But some went down. Enough, maybe. Hours blurred together. Eliza kept up the cold compresses, changed them when they warmed, forced more tea when Maya would take it. The fever held steady for a while, then climbed higher. Maya started shaking violently, her teeth chattering. This isn't working, her mother said, voice breaking. She's getting worse. Give it time. Eliza's hands were shaking too, from exhaustion and fear and the weight of a child's life, resting on knowledge she wasn't sure she actually had. The fever has to break. It just has to. Kaylin hadn't left. He stood against the wall like a sentinel, watching everything, saying nothing. Once their eyes met across the room, and Eliza saw something in his expression she hadn't seen before. Fear. He was scared for Maya, too. Sometime deep in the night, Maya's shaking slowed, then stopped. Eliza pressed her hand to the girl's forehead, hardly daring to hope. Cooler. Not by much, but definitely cooler. It's breaking, she whispered. Maya's mother grabbed her daughter's hand, tears streaming down her face. She said something in her language that Eliza didn't need translated. Thank you. They kept watch through the rest of the night, making sure the fever didn't spike again. As dawnlight filtered through the smoke hole, Maya opened her eyes properly for the first time in 2 days. Mama? Her mother sobbed, pulling her daughter close. Eliza sat back, every muscle in her body trembling from exhaustion and relief. She'd done it. Maybe through skill, maybe through luck, probably through both. But Maya would live. A hand touched her shoulder. Kaylin stood above her, his expression softer than she'd ever seen it. You saved her. We don't know that yet. The fever could come back. You saved her, he repeated firmly. When our healer couldn't, when I didn't know what to do, you stepped in. That took courage. It took desperation. I couldn't just stand there and do nothing. Most people can. Most people do. His hand squeezed gently before letting go. Come on, you need rest. She let him help her to her feet. Her legs barely held her. Outside, the storm had finally broken. Dawn painted the snow-covered village in shades of pink and gold, everything clean and new and impossibly beautiful. People were emerging from their dwellings, checking on neighbors, beginning the work of digging out. When they saw Kaylin helping Eliza walk, when word spread about what had happened with Maya, the whispers started. For once, they weren't hostile. Kaylin walked her all the way to Nita's dwelling. At the entrance, he paused. Thank you. For Maya. For not hesitating. She's just a kid. She deserved a chance. Everyone deserves a chance. He said it like he was talking about more than just Maya. Get some sleep. We'll talk later. He left before she could ask what that meant. Inside, Nita waited with hot food and knowing eyes. Don't. Don't what? Don't read into it. He's grateful, that's all. Maya's important to him. She's his cousin's daughter. You helped family. That matters. I wasn't reading into anything. Sure you weren't. Nita pushed a bowl into her hands. Eat, sleep, and stop looking at him like that. Like what? Like he's not just a man who owns you. The words landed hard. He doesn't own me. Doesn't he? You're here because he brought you here. You stay because he allows it. Everything you have, every bit of acceptance you've earned, It all flows through him. Nita's expression was serious. I'm not saying he's cruel. I'm saying don't confuse gratitude with something else. Don't confuse protection with caring. And definitely don't confuse any of this with choice. Eliza wanted to argue, wanted to say Nita was wrong, that it wasn't like that. But the words stuck in her throat because maybe Nita was right. Maybe she had been reading into things, seeing warmth where there was only duty, kindness where there was only obligation. She ate in silence and fell asleep still wearing her clothes. She woke to voices outside. Afternoon sun slanted through the smoke hole, meaning she'd slept most of the day. Her body ached in new and creative ways. Nita poked her head in. You're awake. Good. Grandmother Sana wants to see you. Eliza's stomach dropped. Why? Probably to thank you for saving Maya, or to chew you out for overstepping. With her, you never know. Grandmother Sana waited in her dwelling, surrounded by the accumulated wisdom of a long life. Baskets of herbs, bundles of dried plants, tools for healing and making. She sat by her fire, back straight despite her age, eyes sharp as broken glass. Sit, she commanded. Eliza sat. You saved Maya's life. I did what I could, which was more than our healer could do while sick with the same fever. Sana studied her with that uncomfortable intensity. Where did you learn healing? My mother knew some things, plants, fevers, basic injuries. She taught me what she could before she died. And you remember? Some of it, not all. I was guessing as much as knowing last night. Honest. Sana nodded approvingly. Good. Liars make poor healers. You cannot lie to sickness. It kills you regardless. She stood, moving to one of her baskets. Our healer is old, getting older. She needs someone to learn from her, to carry on the knowledge. Eliza's heart started beating faster. You want me to learn healing? I want you to be useful in ways that matter. You work hard, yes. You don't complain, but anyone can haul water and chop wood. Healers are rare. Healers are valuable. Sana pulled out bundles of dried plants. You will learn, not just white medicine, but our medicine. Our plants, our methods, our understanding. You will study with our healer when she is well enough to teach. You will practice, and you will learn. It wasn't a request. I'll do my best, Eliza said. Your best may not be good enough, but trying is better than not trying. Sana sat down again. You confuse my grandson. The subject changed through her. I don't mean to. I know. That's what confuses him. Sana's expression softened slightly. He sees strength in you, resilience, the kind his wife had before she died. It frightens him. I'm not trying to replace her. I know that too. But Kalen doesn't. He's built walls around himself these past 3 years. High ones, strong ones. You're the first person to crack them. Even a little, she leaned forward. Be careful, child. He is chief because he is strong. But that strength comes with scars. Deep ones. And scarred men are dangerous, especially to themselves. What are you telling me? I'm telling you to guard your heart. You're already trapped here by circumstance. Don't trap yourself further by wanting things you cannot have. Eliza left Grandmother Sana's dwelling with her head spinning. She walked without direction, ending up at the edge of the village where the prairie stretched endlessly under a sky going purple with dusk. You're thinking too hard. Kalen appeared beside her, silent as smoke. I can hear it from here. How do you do that? Appear out of nowhere? Practice. He stood beside her, looking out at the same view. Grandmother Sana talked to you. She wants me to learn healing. Good. We need healers. And you have the temperament for it. Do I? You stayed calm when Maya was dying. Didn't panic. Didn't freeze. Did what needed doing. He glanced at her. That's rarer than you'd think. They stood in comfortable silence for a while. The wind had died down, leaving the evening quiet except for distant sounds from the village. Can I ask you something? Eliza said. You can ask. I might not answer. Your wife. What was her name? His jaw tightened. Why? Because everyone talks about her like she's a ghost, but nobody uses her name, like saying it might summon something. Enola. The word came out rough, like he hadn't said it in a long time. Her name was Enola. What was she like? Stubborn, fearless, terrible at cooking but excellent at everything else. A ghost of a smile touched his face. She could outride most of the warriors, outshoot half of them, had opinions about everything and no problem sharing them. The council hated her, and I loved her for it. She sounds amazing. She was. The smile faded, and then she was gone. Everything she was, everything she could have been, gone in a night of blood and screaming, her and the baby both. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Sorry doesn't change anything. He turned to look at her properly. Why do you want to know about her? Because she matters to you, and I'm trying to understand why you brought me here. Really why? I told you. You told me the political reasons, the logical ones. But there's more to it. I can see it in the way you look at me sometimes, like you're trying to figure out if I'm real or if I'm going to disappear too. He was quiet for so long she thought he might walk away. Then, when I first saw you, standing in front of your father's house with your head up despite knowing what was about to happen, you reminded me of her, of Enola. The same fire, the same refusal to break. And I thought, he stopped, shook his head. I don't know what I thought. That maybe bringing you here would prove something, or fix something, or just make me feel less empty for a while. Did it work? I don't know yet. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. You're not her. I know that. You're something different, something I didn't expect. What does that mean? It means I'm still figuring it out. He started walking back toward the village. Get inside before you freeze. Winter's not done with us yet. She watched him go, his words echoing in her head. You're something different, something I didn't expect. What the hell did that mean? The healing lessons started 3 days later, once the old healer had recovered enough to teach. Her name was Amma, and she had the patience of stone and the teaching style of a drill sergeant. This plant, she said in heavily accented English, holding up a dried bundle. What is it? I don't know. Then you learn. Look, smell, touch, taste, but carefully. Every sense tells you something. She thrust it at Eliza. Now, what is it? The days fell into a new rhythm. Mornings spent with Amma, learning plants and their properties, what cured and what killed, what helped and what hurt. Afternoons working alongside Nita and the other women, maintaining the endless tasks that kept the village alive through winter. Evenings with Maya, who'd made a full recovery and now demanded stories nightly. Tell the one about the princess in the tower again, Maya said, curled up against Eliza's side. You've heard that one 5 times. I want to hear it 6 times. Eliza told the story, changing details each time to keep it interesting. Maya's mother watched from across the fire, her expression softer than it used to be. Not quite friendly, but not hostile either. Small victories. Winter deepened. Another storm came, then another. The village pulled together, sharing food and fuel, checking on the vulnerable, making sure nobody was forgotten. Eliza found herself integrated into that network without quite realizing when it had happened. People asked her for help with small ailments, brought her their sick children, trusted her with things that mattered. It was terrifying and gratifying in equal measure. Kaylin she saw more frequently, though never for long. He'd appear when she was working, watch for a moment, then move on. Sometimes he'd ask how her healing studies were going. Sometimes he'd just nod and leave. The tension between them felt like a living thing, something growing in the spaces neither of them knew how to fill. One evening, he found her outside Nita's dwelling, struggling with a bundle of firewood that had frozen together. Here, he pulled them apart with easy strength. You're going to hurt yourself doing that alone. I've managed this long. Stubborn doesn't mean smart. But he said it without heat, almost teasing. They worked together in silence, breaking apart the frozen wood, stacking it properly. Their hands brushed once, and Eliza felt the contact like a shock. He felt it too. She could tell by the way he went very still. Eliza. Don't. She didn't know what he was going to say, but she knew she wasn't ready to hear it. Whatever you're about to say, don't. Not yet. Why not? Because I'm still figuring out if I'm staying because I want to or because I don't have a choice. And until I know that, Anything else just makes it more complicated. He studied her face in the firelight. What if it's already complicated? Then we deal with it when I'm ready, not before. He nodded slowly and walked away, leaving her standing alone with her heart hammering against her ribs. Nita appeared in the doorway. You're playing with fire. I'm not playing with anything. Tell yourself that if it helps you sleep. Nita pulled her inside. But when it burns, don't say I didn't warn you. Spring came slowly, grudgingly, like it wasn't sure winter deserved to end. The snow melted in patches, revealing dead grass and frozen earth. Ice broke up in the streams. Birds returned, filling the air with sound after months of silence. The village emerged from winter diminished. 2 more elders had died. 4 children had been lost to sickness, despite Eliza and Amma's best efforts. Food stores were lower than they should have been. Everyone looked thinner, harder, worn down by months of cold and privation. But they'd survived. That counted for something. Eliza stood at the edge of the village one morning, watching the sun rise over the prairie. 6 months. 6 months since warriors had come for her at dawn. 6 months since her father had traded her to pay his debts. It felt like a lifetime ago. You're up early. Kaylin appeared beside her, a pattern now. He'd started doing this more often, finding reasons to be near her, to talk. Small conversations about nothing important, moments that felt bigger than they should. Couldn't sleep. Something bothering you? Everything. Nothing. I don't know. She wrapped her arms around herself. 6 months ago, I was someone else, lived somewhere else, had a different life, even if it wasn't much of one. You miss it? No, that's what bothers me. I don't miss it at all. Not my father, not Red Hollow, not anything about that life. She looked at him. I should miss it, shouldn't I? I should want to go back, but I don't, and I don't know what that makes me. It makes you someone who's adapted, survived, found something better. His voice was quiet. There's no shame in that. Isn't there? I was sold, Kaylin. Traded like livestock, and I'm standing here saying I'm glad it happened because my life is better now. What does that say about me? It says you're honest and strong and smart enough to recognize when fighting against reality is pointless. He turned to face her fully. You were handed a bad situation and made the best of it. That's not weakness. That's survival. Is that what you see when you look at me? A survivor? I see someone who refused to break, who worked when it would have been easier to give up, who saved Maya when she could have let someone else deal with it, who's become part of this place without losing herself in the process. He paused. I see someone remarkable. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Kaylin, I know, you're not ready. You said. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. But I need you to know something. When I brought you here, I thought I was teaching your father a lesson, settling a debt, maybe proving a point to myself about strength and consequences. But somewhere in the past 6 months, it stopped being about any of that. What's it about now? You, just you. His hand came up, fingertips barely brushing her cheek. I didn't plan this. Didn't want it. I built walls specifically to keep this from happening, and you walked right through them like they were made of smoke. Her breath caught. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know that when you decide, if you decide, that you're staying because you want to, not because you have to, I'll be here, waiting for as long as it takes. He walked away, leaving her standing in the dawn light with her heart in her throat and her mind spinning. She was in trouble, deep, complicated, no way out trouble. And the worst part was, she didn't want to escape it. She wanted to run straight into it and see what happened. Eliza threw herself into work after that conversation, trying to outrun the feelings that had taken root in her chest like stubborn weeds. She spent longer hours with Amma, learning to identify plants by touch in the dark, practicing bandaging techniques until her fingers could work without her eyes. She helped Nita repair winter damage to dwellings, hauled more water than necessary, volunteered for every task that kept her busy and distracted. Nita watched her with knowing eyes but said nothing for 3 days. On the 4th, she finally broke. You're being an idiot. Eliza looked up from the hide she was scraping with perhaps more force than required. Excuse me? You heard me. An idiot. Nita sat down across from her. He told you how he feels. You clearly feel something back. And instead of dealing with it like an adult, you're working yourself into the ground pretending it's not happening. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. That's why you've been avoiding the center of the village for days. Why you take the long way to the water source so you won't pass his dwelling. Why you volunteered to help repair Old Man Takuma's roof even though you're terrified of heights. Eliza set down her scraper. It's complicated. Everything's complicated. Life is complicated. That's not an excuse to run from it. I'm not running. You're sprinting. Nita leaned forward. Look, I get it. You're scared. You came here as payment for a debt, and now the man who brought you is saying he has feelings for you. That's confusing and messy and maybe a little bit terrifying, but avoiding him doesn't make any of it go away. It just makes you both miserable. What am I supposed to do? Just walk up to him and say what? Thanks for the confession. Let me think about it while I figure out if I'm staying here because I want to or because I'm trapped. That would actually be more honest than what you're doing now. Nita stood, brushing off her pants. My mother spent 5 years fighting against her life here. 5 years of being angry and bitter and making herself miserable over something she couldn't change. And you know what finally shifted for her? What? She stopped asking if she could leave and started asking if she wanted to. Big difference. Nita walked away, leaving Eliza alone with her thoughts. That night, Eliza couldn't sleep. She lay on her furs, staring at the darkness, turning Nita's words over in her mind. Did she want to stay? The question felt too big, too loaded with implications she wasn't ready to face. But smaller questions, those she could answer. Did she want to leave? No. The thought of going back to Red Hollow, to her father, to that empty life, it made her chest tight with something close to panic. Did she like the work here? Yes. Learning healing gave her purpose. Helping people mattered in ways hauling water for her drunk father never had. Did she feel safe? Safer than she ever had in Red Hollow, where law was optional and protection depended on how much you could pay or fight. And Kaylin, did she have feelings for him? That question she'd been avoiding hardest of all. But lying there in the dark, she made herself face it honestly. Yes, she had feelings for him, had probably started developing them somewhere between his quiet competence, his fierce protectiveness of his people, and the moments when his guard dropped and she saw the man beneath the chief. The man who'd lost everything and kept going anyway. The man who'd looked at her like she was something precious instead of something bought. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like something settling into place, like a bone that had been slightly out of alignment, finally clicking back where it belonged. She got up, pulled on her clothes in the dark, and slipped outside. The village slept under a sky full of stars. A few dogs stirred as she passed, but none barked. She walked without conscious direction, her feet carrying her through familiar paths until she found herself standing outside Kaylin's dwelling. Stupid. This was stupid. It was the middle of the night, and she didn't even know what she wanted to say. She should go back, wait until morning, approach this like a rational person. She pushed aside the hide covering the entrance. Inside, a single lamp burned low. Kaylin sat by the fire, awake, turning something over in his hands. He looked up when she entered, surprise flickering across his face. Eliza, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong, or everything is. I don't know. She stayed near the entrance, suddenly unsure. I couldn't sleep. So you came here. So I came here. She wrapped her arms around herself. I've been thinking about what you said, about waiting, about me deciding. He set down whatever he'd been holding, a small, carved figure, she realized. A bird in flight. And I don't know if I'm ready to decide everything, not yet. But I know some things. She took a breath. I know I don't want to leave. I know I've found something here I never had in Red Hollow. Purpose, community, people who see me as more than my father's daughter. I know that when I think about the future, I see it here, with these people. And me? His voice was careful, neutral. Do you see me in that future? That's the part that scares me. She finally moved closer, sitting down across the fire from him. Everything else makes sense, but you and me, that doesn't make sense. You brought me here as payment for a debt. I shouldn't want this. I shouldn't want you. But you do. It wasn't a question. He said it like fact, like he could read it on her face. I do, she admitted, and I don't know what to do with that. Kaylin leaned forward, firelight casting shadows across his face. Can I tell you what I think? Please. I think you're making this harder than it needs to be. I think you're so worried about what it means, what it says about you, whether it's right or wrong, that you're not letting yourself feel what you already feel. He paused. I did the same thing after Enola died. Spent 3 years building walls, telling myself I was protecting myself from pain. All I did was protect myself from living. What changed? You. He said it simply, without drama. You walked in here and reminded me what it felt like to care about someone, to worry about them, to want to see them smile, to lie awake at night thinking about them. His mouth quirked slightly. It's annoying, honestly. I was doing fine being cold and distant. You ruined that. Despite everything, she laughed. Sorry? Don't be. I'm not. He held her gaze. I'm not asking you to have all the answers tonight. I'm just asking you to stop running from the questions. She looked at him across the fire. This man who'd become so much more than the chief who'd claimed her as payment. This man who'd shown her kindness when he didn't have to, respect when others wouldn't, patience when she'd given him every reason not to. I'm scared, she admitted. Of what? Of this being real. Of wanting it and losing it. Of finding out I'm wrong about you, about us, about everything. Those are all valid fears. He stood, walked around the fire, and sat beside her. Close enough to touch, but not touching. But let me ask you something. What scares you more? Trying this and maybe failing, or never trying and always wondering what if? She knew the answer before he finished asking. Not trying, she whispered. Then don't. His hand found hers, fingers lacing together. We don't have to figure everything out tonight. We don't have to make grand declarations or promises we're not sure we can keep. We just have to stop pretending this isn't happening. Eliza looked down at their joined hands. His was bigger, scarred from years of fighting and work and survival. Hers was smaller, but marked with its own scars now, calluses from labor, a burn from learning to handle hot coals for medicine preparation. They matched. Okay, she said. Okay? Okay. No more running, no more avoiding. We try this, whatever this is. She looked up at him. But slowly. I need slowly. Slowly works for me. He squeezed her hand gently. Though you should probably go back to your own dwelling before the whole village wakes up and gets ideas. They already have ideas. Nita's been giving me pointed looks for days. Nita gives everyone pointed looks. It's her natural state. He stood, pulling her up with him. Go. Sleep. Tomorrow we can figure out what slowly looks like. She walked to the entrance, then turned back. Kaylin? Yeah? Thank you for waiting, for being patient with me. Thank you for being worth waiting for. She left before she could do something stupid like kiss him, walking back through the sleeping village with a lightness in her chest she hadn't felt in months, maybe years. Nita was awake when she slipped back inside, sitting by the fire with a knowing smirk. Don't, Eliza warned. I didn't say anything. You're thinking it very loudly. I'm thinking you look happier than you have since you got here. I'm thinking maybe you finally stopped being an idiot. Nita lay back down. I'm also thinking if you wake me up again tonight with your emotional crisis, I'm making you sleep outside. Eliza threw a small piece of bark at her, missing intentionally, but she was smiling as she settled onto her furs. Sleep came easier than it had in days. The next morning, nothing changed and everything changed. Eliza went about her usual tasks, but there was a lightness to her movements that hadn't been there before. People noticed. Several women gave her curious looks. Dakota grinned when he saw her and said something in their language that made the men around him laugh. What did he say? Eliza asked Nita. He said you look like someone who finally figured out what everyone else already knew. Everyone? The whole village has been watching you and Kaylin dance around each other for months. It's been better entertainment than the storytelling circles. Nita handed her a basket of plants to sort. So, yes, everyone. Eliza felt her face heat. That's mortifying. That's village life. Privacy is a luxury we don't really have here. Kaylin appeared around midday, ostensibly checking on food storage, but somehow ending up where Eliza was working with Amma on grinding herbs. How's the learning going? He asked. Good. Amma says I'm not completely hopeless anymore. Amma snorted. I said you're less hopeless than you were, not the same thing. But her eyes twinkled, taking the edge off the words. Kaylin watched Eliza work for a moment, and the way he looked at her made her fingers fumble. Amma noticed, of course. She said something sharp in their language, and Kaylin actually looked embarrassed. What did she say? Eliza asked once he'd left. She said if you're going to stare at each other like lovesick calves, do it somewhere that won't result in incorrectly mixed medicine. Amma's expression was stern, but amusement lurked underneath. She's not wrong. Focus, girl. This plant can heal or kill depending on the dose. Pay attention. Eliza forced herself to concentrate, but part of her mind kept drifting back to Kaylin, to the conversation last night, to the feeling of his hand in hers, to the fact that she'd chosen this, was choosing this. Days turned into weeks. Spring fully established itself, bringing new growth and new work. Fields needed planting, animals needed tending. The whole rhythm of the village shifted from survival mode to growth mode. Eliza and Kaylin found moments together. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would scandalize the elders. Just small things. Walking together in the evening, talking by the fire. His hand on her back as he passed. Her smile when she saw him across the village. Slowly, like he'd promised. But it was enough. One evening, about a month after their middle-of-the-night conversation, Kaylin found her sitting alone at the edge of the village, watching the sunset paint the prairie in gold and crimson. Mind if I join you? It's your village. I think you can sit wherever you want. Technically, it's everyone's village. I just make the hard decisions. He sat beside her, shoulder to shoulder. You look thoughtful. What's on your mind? A year ago today, my mother died. His hand found hers. I'm sorry. Me too. I was thinking about what she'd make of all this, me being here, everything that's happened. Eliza leaned into his warmth. I think she'd be surprised. Maybe a little horrified at first, but eventually, I think she'd understand. Understand what? That sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads to the best thing that could have happened. That getting sold by my father was terrible, but it brought me here. To this. To you. She looked at him. Is that wrong? To be grateful for something that started so badly? I don't think gratitude is ever wrong. And I don't think the beginning defines the whole story. He turned to face her more fully. We didn't choose how this started, but we're choosing how it continues. That matters more. She kissed him then, impulsively, before she could talk herself out of it. Just a brief press of lips, nothing dramatic. But it felt like crossing a bridge she couldn't uncross. When she pulled back, he was smiling, really smiling, not the small quirk of lips, but a full smile that transformed his whole face. Slowly, huh? He teased. Shut up. Make me. So she kissed him again, slower this time, and felt him smile against her mouth. They stayed there until full dark, talking quietly, stealing kisses, learning the shape of this new thing between them. When they finally walked back to the village, hand in hand where anyone could see, Eliza felt something shift inside her chest. She wasn't Eliza Carter anymore, the girl from Red Hollow whose father drank too much and cared too little. She was just Eliza, healer in training, member of the tribe, woman who'd found her place in the most unlikely way possible, woman who was falling in love with the man who'd brought her here. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home. The summer brought new challenges. Food was plentiful, but had to be preserved for winter. Raids from rival tribes required increased vigilance. Traders came through, bringing news from the wider world that was rarely good. One trader, a grizzled man who'd been traveling the frontier for 40 years, brought news that made Kaylin's expression go hard. Settlements expanding again. 10 miles south of here now. Maybe 15 families. They're talking about building a fort, bringing in soldiers. The council met late into the night. Eliza waited outside with the other women, knowing better than to interrupt, but too worried to sleep. When Kalen finally emerged, he looked exhausted. "We're moving," he said quietly to the gathered people. "In the fall, after harvest. We'll go west, deeper into the territory. It's the only way to stay ahead of the expansion." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Moving meant leaving established fields, familiar hunting grounds, the graves of their dead. "I know it's hard," Kalen continued, "but staying means conflict we can't win. We move, we survive. We stay, we die. It's that simple." Later, in the privacy of his dwelling, Eliza found him staring into the fire. "You okay?" she asked. "No, but I will be." He pulled her down to sit beside him. "This is the 4th time we've had to move in my lifetime. Each time we lose a little more. More land, more tradition, more of who we are. I'm sorry." "Not your fault. You're not the one pushing us out." He was quiet for a moment. "Though I suppose it is your people." The words stung, even though they were true. "I know. I don't blame you for it. You're as much a victim of their greed as we are, just in a different way." He turned to look at her. "But I need to know something. When we move, are you coming with us? Do you want me to?" "That's not an answer." "Yes," she said firmly. "I'm coming with you. This is my home now. These are my people. You're my—" She hesitated, not sure what word to use. "Yours," he finished for her. "I'm yours, and you're mine, if you want to be." "I want to be." He kissed her then, deep and thorough, and she felt the relief in it. The fear he'd been carrying that she might choose to leave, to go back to the settlements, to return to the world she'd come from, as if she'd ever consider it. The summer passed in a blur of preparation and stolen moments. Eliza's healing skills improved dramatically under Amma's teaching. She could now set broken bones, treat fever, identify and mix medicines, even assist with difficult births. The village had started calling on her without hesitation, trusting her knowledge. She and Kalen grew closer, their relationship deepening from tentative exploration to something solid and real. They still hadn't made anything official, hadn't participated in any formal bonding ceremony, but everyone treated them as a pair. People spoke to them together, sought both their counsel, made space for them as a unit. It felt right. One evening in late summer, Grandmother Sana called Eliza to her dwelling. "Sit, child." Eliza sat, suddenly nervous. The old woman's summons were rare and usually meant something important. "You've done well here," Sana said without preamble. "Better than I expected when Kalen first brought you. You've learned our ways, contributed to our community, earned respect that cannot be given, only earned." "Thank you, Grandmother." "Don't thank me yet. I'm not finished." Sana poured tea, the movements precise despite her age. "Kalen has not taken a wife since Enola died. Refused every match the council suggested. We worried he would remain alone, that his grief would consume him." Eliza's heart started beating faster. "But then you came. And slowly, so slowly I wondered if I would die before seeing it, he began to heal. Began to live again instead of merely existing." Sana handed her a cup. "The council has discussed this. If Kalen asks you to be his wife, to bond with him formally, we will not object. In fact, we would welcome it." "He hasn't asked." "He will. He's waiting for the right moment, or possibly working up the courage. Men are foolish that way." Sana's eyes twinkled. "I'm telling you now so you can prepare your answer, and so you understand what it means." "What does it mean?" "It means you would be chief's wife, first woman of the tribe. It comes with responsibilities and expectations. It means children, when they come, would be raised to potentially lead. It means your past becomes irrelevant. You would be fully one of us, no longer the white woman Kalen brought, but simply one of our own." Sana leaned forward. "It also means no turning back. Once you bind yourself to him, to us, that's final. No changing your mind later." "I understand." "Do you? Really?" Sana studied her face. "Your people are encroaching on our land, pushing us further out. This life will only get harder. There will be hunger, hardship, possibly violence. Are you prepared for that?" "I lived through this winter, didn't I? Helped people survive it. I'll help them survive whatever comes next." "Even if what comes next is war with your own people?" The question hit like a fist. Eliza had avoided thinking about it, but Sana was right to ask. If it came to conflict between the tribe and settlers, where would she stand? "They're not my people anymore," she said quietly. "My people are here. This village, this tribe, these are my people now. Whatever comes, I face it with them. With you. With Kaylin." Sana nodded, satisfied. "Good. Then when he asks, say yes. And know that we will stand with you, as you stand with us." Kaylin asked 3 days later. They were alone on the prairie, ostensibly checking trap lines, but really just enjoying time away from the village. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of amber and rose. "Eliza sis," he said, his voice more nervous than she'd ever heard it. "There's something I need to ask you." She turned to find him holding something, a necklace made of bone and stone, intricate and beautiful, clearly crafted with care. "This belonged to my mother," he said. "She gave it to Enola when we bonded. Enola wanted me to give it to someone worthy, if I ever found someone again." He met her eyes. "I found someone. If she'll have me." Eliza's throat tightened. "Kaylin, I know how this started. I know it was wrong bringing you here the way I did, but I can't regret it because it brought you to me, brought us to this." He stepped closer. "I love you, Eliza. I think I started loving you the moment you stood up to Grandmother Sana on your first day here. I want you as my wife, my partner, my equal. I want to build a life with you, have children with you, grow old with you, if you'll have me." She was crying, she realized, tears running down her face that she didn't bother to wipe away. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll have you. I love you too, you stubborn, infuriating, wonderful man." "Yes." He slipped the necklace over her head, then kissed her like she was air and he'd been drowning. She kissed him back with everything she had, pouring all her love and hope and fierce joy into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to hers. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For choosing this, choosing me, choosing us." "You gave me a reason to choose," she smiled through her tears. "Now take me home so we can tell everyone and I can watch Nita try not to say, 'I told you so.'" He laughed, the sound bright and free, and took her hand. They walked back to the village together as the stars came out, ready to start the next chapter of a story that had begun in betrayal and grown into something neither of them had expected. Something real, something chosen, something worth fighting for. The bonding ceremony took place 3 days later, under a full moon that turned the prairie silver. The entire village gathered, dressed in their finest, faces painted with ceremonial colors. Eliza wore a dress Nita and the other women had made for her, soft deerskin decorated with intricate beadwork that had taken weeks to complete. Kaylin's mother's necklace rested against her throat, warm from her skin. Grandmother Sana presided over the ceremony, her voice strong despite her age as she spoke words in the old language that Eliza was only beginning to understand. But she caught enough. Promises of partnership, vows of loyalty, pledges to stand together through whatever came. When it was time for her part, Eliza spoke in their language. The words Nita had helped her practice until her accent was passable, if not perfect. "I choose this life. I choose this man. I choose this people as my own." The village erupted in celebration. Drums beat out rhythms that made her heart race. People danced around the fire, telling stories, singing songs that spoke of joy and hope and new beginnings. Maya rushed up to Eliza, throwing her small arms around her waist. "Does this mean you're staying forever?" Eliza crouched down to the girl's level. "Forever and ever." "Good. You still owe me 5 more stories." "I'll tell you 100 more stories." Maya's eyes went wide. 100? "Maybe more. I'll tell you stories until you're sick of hearing my voice." "That'll never happen," Maya said seriously, then ran off to rejoin the other children. Kaylin pulled Eliza close, his arm around her waist. "You're good with her." "She's easy to be good with. She's a sweet kid. She'll have playmates soon enough, if everything goes according to plan." His hand moved to rest against her stomach, the gesture tender and full of meaning. Eliza covered his hand with hers. "One step at a time. We just got married." "Bonded," he corrected with a smile. "And I'm just saying I'm not opposed to starting a family soon." Noted. She leaned into him, watching the celebration swirl around them. This is really happening, isn't it? This is my life now. Having second thoughts? Not even for a second, just still catching up to the reality of it. She turned in his arms to face him. A year ago, I was miserable in Red Hollow, taking care of a father who couldn't take care of himself, going nowhere, being nobody. Now I'm here, with you, with all of this. It doesn't seem real. It's real. He kissed her forehead. And it's permanent. You're stuck with me now. I can think of worse fates. They danced until the fire burned low and the celebration wound down. People retired to their dwellings, calling out well wishes and blessings as they went. Finally, Kalen led Eliza to his dwelling, their dwelling now, and pulled her inside. The intimacy of the night that followed was tender and awkward and perfect in its imperfection. Two people learning each other, making mistakes, laughing about them, trying again. When they finally fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, Eliza felt more at peace than she could ever remember feeling. She was home. The next morning brought reality crashing back. Scouts reported movement near the southern border. A large group of settlers, maybe 20 families, with wagons and livestock and armed men. The council convened immediately. We need to accelerate the move west, Takeo argued. Waiting for fall is too risky. We should leave now while we still can. And abandon the crops we've planted? Another elder countered. Abandon the stores we've built up? We'd be going into winter with nothing. Better than being driven out with nothing. The argument raged back and forth. Eliza sat beside Kalen, not speaking. She had the right to attend council now as his wife. But she knew better than to voice opinions when she was still learning the dynamics. Finally, Grandmother Sana raised her hand. Silence fell. We send scouts to watch them, learn their intentions. If they're just passing through, we wait and move as planned. If they're settling nearby, we reevaluate. But we do not make decisions based on fear. We make them based on information. The council agreed, though Takeo looked unhappy about it. As they left the lodge, Kalen squeezed Eliza's hand. You're quiet. Not my place to speak yet. I'm still too new. You're my wife. You have as much right as anyone. Right and wisdom are different things. I'll speak when I have something worth saying. She glanced at him. But for what it's worth, I think Grandmother Sana's right. We need information before we panic. Agreed. He looked tired, the weight of leadership sitting heavy on his shoulders. Come on, I need to check the scout rotations. The next week crawled by in tense anticipation. Scouts reported back daily. The settlers had stopped about 12 miles south and were building structures. A permanent settlement then, not just passing through. Kalen spent long hours in council meetings, planning for every possibility. Eliza threw herself into her healing work, preparing medicines, checking supplies, teaching younger women what she knew in case they had to move quickly and she couldn't take everything. On the 8th day, a scout came racing back with news that made everyone's blood run cold. Soldiers, 20 of them, maybe more, riding north toward the settlement. The village erupted in controlled chaos. Warriors prepared weapons. Women and children were moved to the center of the village. Scouts were sent out to track the soldiers' movements. Eliza found Kalen checking weapons with Dakota. What do we do? We prepare for the worst and hope for the best. He didn't look at her, his focus entirely on the task at hand. Eliza, I need you to do something. Anything. If fighting breaks out, I need you to stay with the women and children. Get them to safety if things go bad. I'm not leaving you. You're not leaving the people who can't defend themselves. That's your role now. He finally looked at her, and she saw the fear beneath the determination. Please, I need to know you're safe. I can't fight if I'm worried about you. She wanted to argue, wanted to insist on staying by his side. But he was right. Her responsibility now was to the tribe, not just to him. Okay, she said quietly, but you better come back to me. Always. He kissed her quickly. I love you. I love you too. The soldiers arrived 2 hours later. Kalen met them at the edge of the village with 20 warriors at his back. Eliza watched from a distance, her heart in her throat, hands clenched so tight her nails drew blood. The soldier in charge, a captain by his insignia, held up a hand. We're not here for trouble. Then why are you here? Kalen's voice carried across the distance, hard and unyielding. "We've been sent to deliver a message. The new settlement to the south, they've claimed this land under federal authority. They're offering you compensation to relocate peacefully." "Compensation?" Kalen said the word like it tasted rotten. "For land that's ours. That's always been ours." "That's not how the law sees it, I'm afraid. This territory has been opened for settlement. You can take the compensation and move peacefully, or—" The captain trailed off meaningfully. "Or what? You'll force us out? Kill us if we resist?" "I'm here to avoid that outcome. The compensation is generous: supplies, money, safe passage to the Western Territories. We don't want your compensation. We want to be left alone." "I understand. I do, but I have my orders." The captain actually looked uncomfortable. "You have 1 week to decide. After that, the settlers have authority to take possession of this land by any means necessary. That includes bringing in more soldiers if needed." Kalen stood very still, and Eliza could see him doing the math. 20 warriors against however many soldiers the settlers could summon. Women and children who would be caught in the crossfire. Food stores that would be destroyed. Lives that would be lost in a fight they couldn't win. 1 week, he said finally. The captain nodded and turned his horse. The soldiers rode away, leaving dust and dread in their wake. The council met immediately. The discussion was heated, angry, full of frustration and helplessness. "We fight," Takeo insisted. "We make them pay for every inch of land they take." "We'd lose," Kalen said bluntly. "They have more soldiers, better weapons, and the full weight of their government behind them. Fighting is suicide." "So we just give up? Let them take everything?" "We survive. We move west like we planned, just sooner. We take the compensation, use their money and supplies to build somewhere new. Somewhere they haven't reached yet." "And when they reach there too? What then?" No one had an answer for that. Grandmother Sana spoke into the silence. "We've been moving for generations. Each time we lose a little more. Each time we tell ourselves the next place will be safe, permanent, but it never is." She looked around the circle. "I'm old. I've lived through 4 relocations. I'm tired of running, but I'm more tired of burying our young in battles they cannot win. Kalen is right. We move, we survive, we find a way to preserve who we are, even if we can't preserve where we are." The council voted. The decision was close but clear. They would accept the compensation and move. That night, Eliza found Kalen sitting alone outside their dwelling, staring at nothing. "Hey," she said softly, sitting beside him. "I failed them." His voice was hollow. "I'm chief. I'm supposed to protect them, and I'm leading them in retreat. You're leading them to survival. That's not failure." "Feels like it." "I know." She took his hand. "But you made the right call. Fighting would have gotten people killed, children killed. For what? To hold land for another month, another year? This way, everyone lives. Everyone gets a chance to rebuild. My father would have fought, would have died fighting rather than give an inch. Your father isn't here. You are. And you're choosing life over pride. That takes more courage than fighting ever could." He turned to look at her, eyes bright with unshed tears. "When did you get so wise?" "When I married a man who needed to hear it." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "We'll get through this, together. All of us." "Promise?" "Promise." The next week was a blur of preparation. They packed what they could carry, buried what they couldn't, prepared for a journey into unknown territory. The soldiers returned on the 7th day with wagons full of supplies and a bag of coin that felt like blood money in Kalen's hands. They left at dawn on the 8th day. Eliza looked back once as they crested the first hill, watching the village that had become her home disappear behind them. Somewhere in those structures were memories of her first terrified nights, her first friendships, her first real sense of belonging. Somewhere in that earth were the graves of people she'd tried and failed to save. Kalen rode up beside her. "Don't look back. It'll just make it harder." "I need to look back. I need to remember where I came from to appreciate where I'm going." They traveled west for 3 weeks, following old trails and Grandmother Sana's memories of places her grandparents had spoken of. The journey was hard. 2 elders died on the road. 1 child was born, They lost horses, supplies, time, but they kept moving. Finally, they reached a valley tucked between hills, with a river running through it and trees thick enough to provide shelter. Game signs were everywhere. The land was rich, untouched, perfect. Here, Kaylin decided, we build here. The work of establishing a new village consumed everyone. Structures had to be raised, fields had to be cleared and planted, hunting grounds had to be scouted. Eliza worked alongside everyone else, using her healing knowledge when people were injured, her growing understanding of plants to identify what was safe to eat in this new territory. 3 months after they'd arrived, she confirmed what she'd suspected for weeks. She was pregnant. Kaylin's face when she told him was something she'd remember forever. Joy and fear and wonder all mixed together, making him look younger than she'd ever seen him. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Amma confirmed it this morning, due in early spring if her calculations are right." He pulled her close, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. "A baby. We're having a baby." "We're having a baby," she confirmed, smiling against his chest. That night, they lay together in their new dwelling, his hand resting on her still flat stomach. "I'm terrified," he admitted quietly. "Me too. What if I'm a terrible father? What if something goes wrong? What if everything goes right?" she interrupted. "What if we raise a strong, healthy child who grows up loved and safe? What if we actually get to be happy? Is that allowed? I think we've earned it. After everything we've been through, we've earned a little happiness." He kissed her, slow and tender. "I love you. I love you too." Winter came to the new valley, but it was gentler than the previous year. They'd built better, prepared better, knew better what to expect. Eliza's pregnancy progressed normally, and Amma trained her in childbirth practices while making dark jokes about how ironic it would be if the healer needed healing herself. "You'll be fine," Amma assured her. "You're strong, built for this." "How can you tell?" "I've delivered half the children in this tribe, I can tell." She poked Eliza's belly gently. "This one's sitting right, good size. No problems I can see. Just don't be stupid and try to work through labor like some women do." "I'll try not to be stupid. That's all anyone can ask." Spring arrived with the baby coming 2 weeks early. The labor was long and painful and exactly as terrible as everyone had warned her it would be. Kaylin paced outside the dwelling like a caged animal, while Nita and Amma worked with Eliza through each contraction. "I can't do this," Eliza gasped during a particularly brutal wave of pain. "You can and you will," Amma said firmly. "You've done harder things. You'll do this too. Name one harder thing. You survived being sold by your father. You survived winter. You survived learning healing from me, which is arguably the hardest thing anyone's ever done." Amma's dry humor cut through the pain. "Now push and stop complaining." Hours later, as dawn light filtered through the smoke hole, a baby's cry filled the air. "A girl!" Nita announced, placing the screaming, squirming bundle on Eliza's chest. "Loud and angry. She'll fit right in." Eliza looked down at her daughter, and felt something fundamental shift in her chest. This tiny person, red-faced and furious, was hers. Theirs. The product of everything she and Kaylin had built together. "She's perfect," Eliza whispered. "She's a mess," Amma corrected. "But yes, she's perfect. Now let me clean her up before Kaylin breaks down the door." They cleaned the baby and Eliza, made them both comfortable, and then finally allowed Kaylin inside. He stopped in the doorway, staring at his wife and daughter like he was afraid they might be a dream. "Come meet your daughter," Eliza said softly. He crossed to them in 2 strides, dropping to his knees beside the bed. His hands shook as he reached out to touch the baby's tiny fingers. "She's so small." "She won't be for long. Amma says she's going to be tall like you." "Does she have a name?" They discussed this, argued about it, considered a dozen options. "Enola," Eliza said. "After your first wife, if that's okay with you." His eyes filled with tears. "You'd do that?" "She gave you the ability to love again. She gave you the courage to try. This baby wouldn't exist without her in a way. It feels right to honor her." He leaned over, kissing Eliza's forehead, then the baby's. Enola, welcome to the world, little one. You have no idea how much you're already loved. The baby, Enola, yawned and promptly fell asleep, completely unconcerned with the momentousness of the occasion. News of the birth spread through the village quickly. People came with gifts, blessings, advice. Maya was beside herself with excitement, already declaring herself Enola's big sister and protector. I'll teach her everything, Maya announced. Stories and plants and how to climb trees and everything. She can't even hold her head up yet, Nita pointed out. I'll teach her when she's ready, but I'm starting a list now. Life settled into a new rhythm. The village thrived in its new location. Crops grew well. Hunting was good. Traders found them and established roots. Slowly, carefully, they rebuilt what they'd lost. Eliza balanced motherhood with her healing work, often tending to patients with Enola strapped to her back, the baby content to sleep through medical consultations. Kalen proved to be a devoted father, often found making silly faces at his daughter during council meetings until someone reminded him they were supposed to be discussing serious matters. She smiled at me, he'd insist. That's gas, Amma would say. It's a smile. When Enola was 6 months old, a rider came to the village. Not a warrior, not a scout, a stranger, dusty and tired from hard traveling. He asked for Eliza Carter. She came out to meet him, Enola on her hip, Kaylin at her side. You Eliza Carter? The man asked. I was. I'm just Eliza now. Got a message for you from Red Hollow. He pulled out a crumpled letter. Man named Thomas Carter. Said it was urgent I find you. Eliza stared at the letter like it was a snake. My father. He's dying, ma'am. Asked me to find you. Said he had things he needed to say. She took the letter, hands shaking slightly. Kaylin's hand came to rest on her shoulder, solid and supportive. Thank you for bringing this, she said to the rider. There's food and water if you need it before you head back. The man nodded and left them alone. Eliza didn't open the letter immediately. She and Kaylin walked back to their dwelling in silence. Inside, she finally broke the seal and read. The handwriting was shaky, almost illegible. The words were simple. I'm dying. I know I don't deserve your time, but I need to see you. Need to say I'm sorry for real, face to face, please. Your father. She read it 3 times, then handed it to Kaylin. He read it once and set it aside. What do you want to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to ignore it. He made his choices. He doesn't get to summon me back just because he's dying. But he's still my father, and I don't know if I can live with myself if I don't at least hear what he has to say. Kaylin was quiet for a long moment. If you want to go, I'll go with you. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. You're my wife. Your pain is my pain. Your choices are our choices. He cupped her face gently. Whatever you decide, we do it together. She leaned into his touch. I want to go. I need to. But I'm terrified. Of what? Of feeling nothing. Of feeling too much. Of him dying before I get there, or surviving and wanting me to stay. Of opening old wounds that have finally started to heal. All valid fears? He kissed her forehead. But you'll regret it if you don't go. I can see it in your eyes. You need closure, one way or another. She nodded. We leave tomorrow? We leave tomorrow. They traveled light and fast, just the 2 of them and Enola. The journey back to Red Hollow took 4 days, and with each mile, Eliza felt the past pulling at her like a current. Red Hollow looked smaller than she remembered, shabbier. The buildings were more weathered, the main street more empty. The whole town felt like it was slowly dying. Her father's house was worse. The porch had collapsed, just like she'd warned him. The roof sagged dangerously. Weeds grew waist-high around the foundation. Inside, her father lay in what used to be her bed, looking like a skeleton covered in gray skin. He'd aged 20 years in the 1 year since she'd seen him. Eliza? His voice was barely a whisper. I'm here, Papa. His eyes focused on her, then on Kaylin standing behind her, then on the baby in her arms. You came. I didn't think you would. I almost didn't. She stayed by the door, not quite able to make herself go closer. What did you want to say? I'm sorry, for everything, for drinking, for gambling, for being a terrible father. For selling you. Tears ran down his wasted face. I was weak and selfish, and I destroyed everything good in my life. Your mother, you, all of it. I know. Can you forgive me? The question hung in the stale air of the dying house. Eliza looked at this man who'd given her life but never really lived his own, who'd loved his wife but couldn't honor her memory, who'd had a daughter but couldn't be a father. I don't know, she said honestly. Maybe someday, but not today. Today I'm just sad for what could have been and grateful for what actually is. You look happy. More tears. That's good. That's all I ever wanted for you. No, it wasn't. If it was, you would have made different choices. She shifted Enola higher on her hip. But I'm happy. I have a husband who loves me, a daughter who's perfect, a community that values me. I have purpose and belonging and everything I never had here. I'm glad. He started coughing, a wet rattling sound that spoke of lungs giving up. Tell me about her, your daughter. So Eliza did. She told him about Enola, about the village, about her life now. She talked until her father's eyes started to close, his breathing growing shallower. Thank you, he whispered, for coming, for letting me see you one more time. Rest, Papa, just rest. He died 3 hours later, Eliza holding his hand, Kaylin standing watch by the door. It was quiet, peaceful. Better than he probably deserved, but more mercy than she'd expected to give. They buried him the next day in the small cemetery outside town, next to Eliza's mother. Mrs. Henderson and a few others came, but the turnout was small. Thomas Carter hadn't left many people who cared enough to say goodbye. Standing at the grave, Eliza felt something release in her chest, the last thread tying her to this place, to this life, to the girl she used to be. It snapped cleanly, and she was free. You okay? Kaylin asked quietly. Yeah, I think I am. She looked at him. Can we go home now? Wherever you want to go. Home. To our people. To our life. That's where I want to be. They left Red Hollow that afternoon and didn't look back. The journey back to the village felt lighter somehow. Eliza had said her goodbyes, closed a chapter, made peace with the past as much as anyone ever really could. The future stretched ahead of them, unknown and probably difficult, but theirs to shape. When they crested the final hill and saw the village spread below them, Eliza felt her heart swell with something she'd never felt looking at Red Hollow. This was home. These were her people. This life she'd built from the ashes of the old one. This was what mattered. Enola gurgled happily from her carrier, and Kaylin squeezed Eliza's hand. Welcome home, he said. Welcome home, she echoed. They rode down into the village together, and people came out to greet them. Maya ran up immediately, demanding to know if they'd brought her anything. Nita hugged Eliza hard enough to make her ribs creak. Grandmother Sana gave her an approving nod. That night, with Enola asleep between them and the sounds of the village settling for the night all around them, Kaylin pulled Eliza close. No regrets? He asked. Not a single one. You? Only that I didn't find you sooner, that we wasted time we could have spent like this. We found each other when we needed to. That's what matters. She nestled into his warmth. I was thinking earlier about how this all started. Your father's debt. Being traded like I was worth less than the cost of his whiskey, and I realized something. What's that? I'm grateful for it. Not for the betrayal or the fear or the pain, but for where it led. Because if none of that had happened, I'd still be in Red Hollow, watching my father drink himself to death, going nowhere, being nobody. Instead, I'm here. I'm a healer. I'm your wife. I'm Enola's mother. I'm part of something bigger than myself. You would have found your way eventually. Strong people always do. Maybe, but this is my way. This is my life. And I wouldn't change a single step of the journey that got me here. He kissed the top of her head. I love you. I love you too. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance. The prairie stretched endless in all directions, full of possibility and promise. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled at the moon. Eliza Carter, no, just Eliza now, closed her eyes and let sleep take her. She'd been sold as payment for a debt she didn't owe. She'd been dragged across the frontier to a place she didn't know. She'd been given a choice between breaking and bending. She'd bent. And in bending, she'd found her strength. In losing everything, she'd found what mattered. In being traded away, she'd found her home. The story that began with betrayal at dawn had become something else entirely, something better. Something worth the journey, no matter how dark the path had been. And as she drifted into sleep with her family around her and her future stretching bright ahead, Eliza felt nothing but gratitude for the cruel twist of fate that had brought her here. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is the best thing that could have happened. Sometimes getting lost is the only way to find yourself. Sometimes you have to lose everything to gain what you never knew you needed. This was her life now, chosen, built, earned, and she wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.